Recently, I've been spending a lot of time criticizing Trump and his administration as they have done a lot of things that I don't agree with recently. From bombing Iran to the constant unconditional support of Israel to deploying the troops in DC, there's been a lot of things that I have not aligned with policy-wise with the right or with Trump. Now, despite this, during what is a slow news week this week, so slow that people even thought that President Trump had passed away, I thought it was a fantastic time to talk about why, despite all of my disagreements with the right and all the reasons why I don't like Trump, why I would never vote for a Democrat as of right now in September 2025. Just a little bit of background for those who are new. I voted for Joe Biden in 2020 and was so upset with the way that the Democratic Party went that I ended up voting for Trump in 2024. Take in mind during both of these decisions, the 2021 especially, and in 2024, I am a very young man. I'm a Gen Z male. Now, knowing what I know after seeing Biden and Trump in power while actually being an adult, I wouldn't vote for either political party. And I want to make this perfectly clear. Everything that I'm saying that criticizes the Democrats here in this video, just because I'm saying that this is a criticism of the Democrats does not mean that I'm praising the Republican Party, and also does not mean that the Republicans don't do the exact same thing. Because in most circumstances and with most things that I'm listing here, you will find that both parties behave the exact same way, just with different caveats to it. So without further ado, let's start talking about all the reasons why I'm never blue no matter who. And the first one is the Joe Biden cover-up during the 2024 election. As a sensible human being, a human being with eyes and ears and cognitive thought, I was able to tell that Joe Biden was losing a step all the way back in 2022, as we seen clips of him not being able to walk, not being able to talk, and the amount of interviews and press that Joe Biden did dropped exponentially. All of this culminating in the 2024 debate, where me and a large majority of Americans all knew that Joe Biden was going to flop in the debate. And even after the debate, you had people justifying Joe Biden doing bad in the debate, saying, oh, a childhood stutter had reemerged. Oh, it's just the way that Joe Biden talks. Everybody makes mistakes or has a bad debate. Everybody has an off day every now and then. And then there was the cope of, CNN scheduled the debate late at night when Joe Biden's bedtime is like 8 or 9 p.m. The massive amounts of cope around the Joe Biden debate was a substantial reason of why the Democrats lost in 2024. The National Security Advisor for the Democrats, his name is Henry Apel, or at least that's who it was while Biden was president. Even he, a member of Biden's administration, described him as like dead.
Here's the team. Joe Biden is like dead. Not better. Like he can't just say a sentence. He's like really progressed in his old age. Everybody recognized. I can't believe it wasn't a bigger scandal.
You're telling me that top Democrats in his administration were able to see these problems with Joe Biden, but yet the media was going to tell me and the majority of American people, oh, he's sharp as a tack. Oh, there's nothing wrong with him.
And the people that I've talked to and everybody that I have say he's as sharp as a tack. He's fine. We all have an issue with memories. As we get older, we forget names, something. He's overcome a stutter.
After all that, you then have Kamala Harris doing an interview with Brett Baier of Fox News. And when he asks her, hey, did you notice that Joe Biden was, not 100% there? You're his vice president. You were talking to him every day. You're around him. You work with him. You didn't know this? Kamala's response, Joe Biden's not on the ballot. It's not important.
Joe Biden was on his game, that ran around circles on his staff. When did you first notice that President Biden's mental faculties appeared diminished?
Joe Biden, I have watched from the Oval Office to the Situation Room, and he has the judgment and the experience to do exactly what he has done in making very important decisions on behalf of the American people.
There were no concerns raised?
Brett, Joe Biden is not on the ballot.
I understand.
And
but
Donald Trump.
You met with him at least once a week for 3.5 years. You didn't have any concerns?
I think the American people have a concern about Donald Trump, which is why the...
Well, Kamala, you're right. Joe Biden isn't on the ballot. That's the whole reason why Fox News is interviewing you about your presidential campaign in the first place. But it's very important to know if the person who's running for president lied to us about the health of who was the current president at the time during that interview. It's pretty important stuff that you can't just brush off by saying, oh, well, he's not on the ballot, so it's just in the past. We don't have to talk about it. What an absolutely terrible response. Take in mind that this was during the only hostile or contentious interview that Kamala Harris did throughout her entire campaign. On the subject of Kamala Harris's campaign, let's delve into the second reason why I won't vote for the Democrats, and that's because of the Kamala Harris campaign in 2024. Kamala Harris spent over 100 days campaigning for president in 2024, and in that time did a total of 13 interviews. And some people will say, well, you just explained why. She was only campaigning for 100 days. Trump did 14 interviews in that same time period. Well, you got to remember, Trump has been president before. He's been in the political limelight for the past 10 years straight. People know who Trump is. At this point, if you don't know who Trump is or what kind of person he is, there's something wrong with you. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, she's never ran for president before. She's never gotten a single primary vote from an American ever. But yet she is only going to give 13 interviews in 100 days. And people are saying, oh, well, it was only a 100-day campaign, so she only had time for 13 interviews. After it was announced that Joe Biden was dropping out and he endorsed Kamala Harris, and it was basically announced that she was going to be taking over running in the 2024 election, she waited over 40 days before giving a single interview. This is absolutely unacceptable, and to me highlights the lack of transparency in the Democratic Party. Say what you will about Trump and the Republican Party. They definitely got their secrets. They're definitely elusive and manipulative about things, but at least Trump hops on Joe Rogan for 3 hours, hops on Impulsive for an hour, hops on Theo Vaughn for 2 hours, does multiple hours and hours of interviews. Dr. Phil, the list keeps going. I mentioned the figures earlier that Kamala did 13 interviews after Joe Biden dropped out and Trump did 14. The average length for the Trump interviews, those 14, was 90 minutes. The average length for the Kamala Harris interviews, 28. We also have to talk about the fact that Kamala Harris's campaign raised over $1 billion in donations, and still, after only 100 days, ended the campaign in debt. Then, after losing, which the Democrats built the election as the most important thing in the world, Trump cannot win. There will be democracy. Women will lose their rights. The people rallied behind Harris, gave her $1 million. She finishes the campaign in debt and then has the audacity to beg and ask for more money from the American people to pay off the debt after you lost and supposedly let us fall to dictatorship. Fuck off. If we buy the Democratic narrative, then you are the worst possible candidate in the world because you lost to somebody that in your eyes is so abundantly evil. And you expect us to continue to flood money into you after you're a loser? Like, no. And people will always draw comparisons to the Republicans and Trump. So I'll say, yeah, Trump raised a lot of money. Not as much as Kamala Harris did, that's for sure. And of the money that Trump raised, why don't you guys take a look at how much went to Kamala's campaign staff versus how much went to Trump's campaign staff? And you'll find some very surprising statistics. And it all culminates to the major point of saying, if Kamala Harris and the Democrats can't budget their own campaign, how do I expect you to budget the country? People like to refer to Donald Trump as Deficit Donald, as he's passed economic plans that will increase the debt even more despite running on decreasing the debt. I would argue the Democrats aren't doing anything about the debt either. They don't even know how to budget a fucking campaign for 100 days. Moving on to my next point, which, like the very first point I made, involves Joe Biden. And you have the obvious hypocrisy from Democrats like Harry Sisson, who claim that Trump is MIA or could possibly have passed away after not talking to the press for 3 days. Meanwhile, Biden spent hundreds of days out of the sight of public and not talking to the press at all. And the reason that I highlight this as an issue is not just to call out Harry Sisson. This hypocrisy exists amongst the entire Democratic Party, from the bigwig officials to the influencers like Harry, all the way down to the regular common people who represent the Democratic Party or the left. And this top-down hypocrisy on the left extends so far that it even affects and applies to the people that I know personally who represent the left or the Democrats. I'm not going to out their name, but a friend of mine on Facebook made a post rightly calling out MAGA for raising a GoFundMe for Shiloh Hendricks, who is a woman who called a allegedly black disabled child the N-word. And I would never donate to Shiloh Hendricks. I am not approving of that behavior in any way. But people on the left should also be able to call out, well, how about the fact that BLM and the left rallied around Carmelo Anthony, a man who took the life of another student in college? They raised over $500 for his GoFundMe. But despite this, my friend, when I bring this up and I say, well, you're going to call this out, but you're not going to mention this, they have the audacity to say, oh, well, I don't know who those people are. Are you approving of the action? Well, no, obviously I am not approving of the action. But your response of saying, well, I don't know who those people are, is you admitting that you only focus on the narratives that you want to hear. Imagine if I said that I think both political parties are connected to Epstein, and I said I think the left is connected to him because Bill Clinton took trips to his island and because he had relations with an intern who was very young named Monica Lewinsky. If your response to that was, well, I don't know who Monica Lewinsky and Bill Clinton are, but I know that Trump's implicated, you are giving a blatantly ignorant response, an open hypocrisy, addressing the things that are wrong with one side and not the other. And as I've addressed many times on this channel, if you are not willing to criticize the wrong in your own party or point out the things that could be wrong in your own party, even if you don't know, you are a cult member. Sticking on the subject of Democrat hypocrisy, the next reason why I wouldn't vote blue is because they're not for you. And what I mean by that is they are not for the working class. And let me explain a real example that to me exemplifies why the Democrats prove they're not for the working class. Joe Biden, during his bid for the 2020 election, ran on the idea of a $15 minimum wage being implemented nationally.
It's time we had a $15 an hour minimum wage so families can earn a living and get ahead. As president, I'll make sure we get it done. I approve this message, and I can't do without you.
Despite this being one of the biggest promises of Joe Biden's campaign, it never happened. Now, if you Google, did Biden raise the minimum wage to $15? Google gives you this really deceptive answer explaining that yes, Joe Biden did raise the minimum wage to $15, but he only did it for federal workers. And the Democrat response will be, well, Joe Biden wasn't ever going to be able to get a $15 minimum wage to pass in the Senate. The Republicans and even some Democrats would have shot it down. Well, he passed the $15 minimum wage for federal workers through an executive order that did not require a vote. Why couldn't he do that for the rest of us? But no, it's only going to be the federal employees who are making more money as opposed to the Americans, which the national minimum wage stayed $7.25 under Joe Biden and did not move at all. Now, knowing what I know in 2025, 5 years after the fact, I understand that there's a lot of arguments for and against a $15 minimum wage. I don't know if I would have been as in support of it now as I was back then. But back then, believe me, as a Burger King worker making $9 an hour, That $15 minimum wage sounded pretty good. And to have the Democrats run on that as one of their main principles, and then to have it not even be brought up during the presidency, like ever, to me showed that the Democrats are capable of lying. And in this situation, you can't use the reasons to debate against the minimum wage as justification for why Biden didn't do it. So you might say, well, if they increased the minimum wage to $15 an hour, that would have undoubtedly caused massive inflation. Well, guess what? During Joe Biden's presidency, we got the massive inflation anyway. The only difference is we didn't get any sort of raise in our salaries. And if that's the argument you want to stand on, that's good for you. But the Democrats ran on it. They shouldn't have ever ran on it or proposed it at all or put the idea into the air if they knew that they wouldn't do it because of all the downsides that it could have. Next time, just shut up then. On a little bit of a pivot, the next reason why I wouldn't vote blue is because the Democratic Party is a monopoly and there is no one who is allowed to run that isn't handpicked by the DNC. On this point, I think it's worth mentioning, like I did at the beginning of the video, that this is not a defense of the Republican Party, and I am not encouraging you to go and vote for them just because I'm not voting blue. I know that all the ways I'm going to describe how the DNC basically rigs their election, the Republicans and the GOP do basically the exact same thing. So just worth reiterating, I am not defending the Republican Party when I state these points, but the DNC undoubtedly tries to rig the election and has clear bias towards the candidates that they want, as opposed to picking who the people actually want. To exemplify and prove my point of how the DNC essentially rigs the election, we're going to take a look at the 2016 Democratic primary, which was primarily, as there was a ton of other candidates, primarily came down to Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders. These next reasons I discuss is how the DNC tried to assure, without a doubt, that Hillary Clinton would be the nominee while sabotaging Sanders' chances. Firstly, and this really should be my only point, you have leaked emails from the DNC chair at the time, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And the reason that I say at the time is because these emails showing explicit bias against Sanders led to her resignation as the DNC chair for what was clear, unrivaled bias. Then you have the fact that the DNC, in order to protect Hillary Clinton, only scheduled 6 debates for the Democratic primaries. They eventually moved it up to 9 after pushback. And this is all way less than the previous 26 debates that they had in 2012 and 17 in 2004. To me, this absurd low amount of debates, 6 that they attempted to schedule, clearly was made to protect Hillary Clinton. Also, by negating these debates, Hillary Clinton, being the former first lady to President Clinton himself, is obviously going to have more national recognition than all the other Democrats who are running at that time. So by limiting the amount of debates, you're going to make it to where people, when they go and vote on that primary, Hillary Clinton's going to be the only name that sounds familiar, or the only name that they think will be mainstream enough to compete with whoever the Republican is. And this next one is an obvious one. The DNC had a joint funding agreement with the Clinton Foundation in her campaign prior to the campaign or the entire election cycle even starting during the previous year in 2015. This, to me, along with the Democrats not even having a primary in 2024 after Biden dropped out, shows that they are only willing to put the candidates that are handpicked there. The Democrats have run on a cycle of Barack Obama to Joe Biden to Kamala Harris, and then probably Kamala Harris to Tim Walz if they would have won. I'll take it one step further. After Bill Clinton was the Democratic president in the late 90s, who ran as president against Bush in the very next election? His vice president, Al Gore. The Democratic Party, like the Republican Party, is not allowing you to have a democratic say in who the candidates actually are. It's just whoever the DNC thinks that they can control and whoever they want it to be. This one's going to hit a little bit closer to home to all my fellow people from Detroit. in saying that I look up to Mike Duggan. I think he's done a great job in the handling of Detroit. He's dropped the unemployment rate from 20% down to 5% in just a time frame of 5 years. Violent crime has seen record lows within the past 30 years, and Detroit has also seen its first population growth under Mike Duggan since the 50s. The reason why I point all of this out is Mike Duggan is a former member of the Democratic Party and left the Democratic Party recently, citing toxic policies as the reason why he won't reaffiliate with the Democratic Party and why he's running as an independent for the governor of Michigan in 2026. And I find myself agreeing with Mike Duggan. I have also left the Democratic Party due to some of their toxic policies. Getting into my next point, which is those toxic policies, you have the radical transgenderism laws that have been passed in California under Gavin Newsom. Firstly, you have Assembly Bill 1955, which bans school districts from enacting or enforcing policies that mandate staff to disclose a student's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression to parents or others without the student's consent. To put that into normal words, basically what the state of California is saying with Assembly Bill 1955 is that teachers are not allowed to inform parents if the child is identifying as something different in the classroom. This to me is a clear infringement of parental rights and is also promoting and propagating children to go to transgender ideology. This law, paired with SB 107, also known as the Transgender Sanctuary State Law, protects kids if laws in their states outlaw trans surgeries for minors. California asserts jurisdiction in custody cases if one parent brings the child over for care, prioritizes the treatment over other state rulings. So basically what that law is saying, let's say a mom and a dad have a kid and the dad disagrees with the idea that the child could become transgender. Doesn't think that the child should be thinking about it yet, doesn't think that it should be a topic in the child's mind. If the mom takes the child to California and enacts transgender surgeries on the child without the other parental parent's consent, California will protect the mom from the legal scrutiny of the other case, violating the father's potential rights. My personal beliefs are far different than my policy beliefs. My personal beliefs is I don't really accept transgenderism. I don't agree with it. I don't think that a man can become a woman or vice versa. On the other hand, my policy position is a lot more moderate, and I would even say liberal, as I believe that if you want to identify as trans, there is nothing that I can do to stop you. You have every God-given right and government-given right as an American to identify as whatever you want to identify as. I have no right to prohibit you from doing that. But when you start pushing it to kids, and when you start outlawing teachers from informing parents that the child could be identifying as something different, let's say the ideas of transgenderism ideology are pushed by the school. Or let's say they have a teacher who's corrupt and believes in it in a radical way. If the student starts identifying as something different, the parents don't get to know, it's actually illegal and the teachers can face jail time for telling them. This is where you're starting to take it way too far. And you might be asking yourself, well, this is just a radical sect of the Democratic Party. Not all Democrats are left-leaning people, believe in trans surgeries for children, are withholding parental rights from the parents. But Gavin Newsom does. The front runner for the 2028 election candidate for the Democrats, and even the election winner, according to some polls, is Gavin Newsom. So if that's who the Democratic Party is rallying behind, then unfortunately, for me and a lot of other moderates, you're never going to have our vote ever again. On the subject of Gavin Newsom, one of the last reasons why I would find myself wanting to vote for the Democratic Party is because despite all the stuff that I just listed, at least they will be more cordial, more professional, more politician than President Trump is. But now you have Gavin Newsom in his stupid press office account literally trying to imitate Trump and attract voters in the exact same way that Trump did, thus making the Democratic Party just as hostile, just as unprofessional, just as bad as Trump is. I believe I forgot to mention this, but another reason why I won't vote for the Democrats, Epstein, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Michelle Obama, the list goes on. No Democrats will mention Epstein. They won't touch it with the 10-foot pole. Why? It seems very smart that they should criticize Trump right now. Everybody's on his ass. His MAGA base is turning on him, right? Because of the Epstein issue. Why aren't the Democrats talking about it? That's why I'll never vote blue. Never. And last, but certainly not least, the last reason why I won't vote blue is whataboutism. If your response to any of the things that I criticize the Democratic Party for is, well, Trump does this, Trump also does this, the Republicans also do, well, the GOP does that, you are not addressing my concerns. Like I said at the beginning, this is in no way a defense of the Republican Party, but simply why I'm dissatisfied with the Democratic Party. I am not like most people. I will not pick the lesser of two evils. I simply won't do it. But on that note, I'm going to call it here. I promise you guys, I have more reasons, but that was just the surface level of some of the main reasons why I won't vote for the Democratic Party. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I am completely open to discourse and discussion. And leave a like and comment if you enjoyed today's video, as I am trying to bring some sensibility to politics. As I mentioned, both parties are just stuck in their ways and we clearly need a change. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.